We are here live from Vietnam and live from America. So we're going to be talking about Obama's recent interview with Wired magazine on preparing for a future of artificial intelligence, and also the White House paper that was brought out by the same around the same topics. And so, yes, it was quite interesting. I was pleasantly surprised that they weren't as, yeah, they were quite progressive. They were quite, Obama in interviews seemed quite interested in these ideas and quite informed. So they brought up, they even mentioned by name the singularity and the intelligence explosion. They mentioned the difference between narrow and artificial general intelligence, spoke about automating workforce and possible automating of all sorts of jobs that won't be available to humans anymore, and a universal basic income. And this is something that James and people at the IEET have been talking about for quite some time. So it seems it's a special interest to James, so I thought I might get James's opinion on this outcome. So yeah, welcome, James.
Hey.
So yeah, obviously you've read the paper there, and you've watched the interview or read the interview. What are your initial reactions?
Well, we were very surprised and delighted that the White House launched a series of collaborations with Silicon Valley leaders and with think tankers around the country who've been working on technological innovation and artificial intelligence questions. They launched this about a year ago and had a series of town meetings, Washington, D.C., and other places where these issues were addressed, and a series of white papers and position papers started to come out from various organizations, Brookings and the other foundations and so forth. One of them that we were delighted by over the summer was Jason Furman's, who's the chief economist, the President's Council of Economic Advisors. He directly addressed technological unemployment and basic income guarantee as policy questions, and he was skeptical that there was evidence for technological unemployment, as many are, and did not exactly say capitalism will always create jobs, but kind of implied it, and then said basic income wouldn't be a good policy solution. Okay, fine. But he addressed it. He took it seriously. And that's what we had not seen before from what we call inside the Beltway policy wonks. And especially not from progressives, because the progressive and labor response up to this point had been capitalism may or may not always create jobs, but if they don't create jobs, it's bad politics' fault. It's not technology's fault. It's that workers are not being given X, and the business climate's not being massaged in this particular way. And I understand why they want to say that. In the first place, the paradigm of full employment is still the overwhelmingly popular paradigm. Very few people are clamoring for a world of no work, even if they think that it's likely. And a lot of Americans actually, when Pew has asked, most Americans say eventually there's going to be less work as a result of automation. And they say, well, how about your job? How quickly will it be automated? And they say, well, my job's never going to be automated because no robot could ever do my job. But most work can be automated. So we're in that kind of weird situation right now. But at any rate, people accept that this future is coming broadly. But very few policy wonks have begun to address it until now. And now that the progressive left is beginning to take these questions seriously, I think it positions us very well for the next recession, the next wave of job dislocations and precarity that are going to either continue to go in this proto-fascist direction, or a nationalism, protectionism, the breakdown of global bonds and trade, or go in a more progressive direction, which basic income guarantee, holds out one of the hopes for. And the fact that the president has directly addressed it, and the fact that the president, one of the directions that he may go after his presidency is to work with Silicon Valley on these issues. That is just fascinating.
And it is fascinating. And I mean, it's unprecedented, these sorts of things that come out of the mouth of the president. I'm wondering if it's just Obama's personality that allows him to get away with these sorts of things, whereas somebody like Hillary or George Bush would have really touched them because they thought they'd cop too much flack. But this Obama guy doesn't seem to care as such. I mean, he cares about the policies, but he doesn't care about the supposed ridicule that could come from it. Maybe.
Well, Obama taught at the University of Chicago. I know people think of him as a Harvard man or a Claremont man or whatever, but I think of him as a Chicago man, and he's a professor at heart, and he's always had that professorial air about him. So the fact that he's not challenged by big ideas and is not a surprise to me. I hope that he's a successful post-president. The fact that he's the first president in a long time without a major scandal. I mean, how could we possibly? He said recently,
What, you mean you're not a birther?
Yeah, exactly. He said recently, I called for change in American politics. I guess I should have been a little bit more specific. And anyway, I can't believe that we're trading Obama. As I said, I don't think Hillary is as bad as the right or left have demonized her, but she's no Obama. So we'll see. Anyway, I think that the interesting questions, the catastrophic risks questions are the ones that I don't see being taken sufficiently seriously. I always said that if the Defense Department took the catastrophic risks of artificial intelligence as seriously as people in our community tend to, that Ben Goertzel and a lot of people we know would be in the bottom of a DoD prison, under the Pentagon, because you just don't let people. It's like people playing with nukes in their basement for all these labs to be doing artificial intelligence research. Now, how we actually regulate that stuff, I haven't got a clue. I've got some ideas about how we might globally put GPS trackers and automatic recorders into gene printers so that we could control SynBio technologies and stuff. How we control artificial intelligence research. Charlie Strauss, who's always one of the best futurists to pay attention to, Scottish science fiction writer, who we gave he's a good guy. He's got the Laundry series, which is a mashup of the British Civil Service spy novels and the Cthulhu Lovecraft mythos. And the core conceit of the Laundry series, which is just hilarious and wonderful read, is that mathematicians are constantly accidentally discovering the math that unlocks the boundaries between universes and accidentally letting in the ancient eldritch horrors that wait beyond the boundaries of in other universes. And so this British ministry has to go out, find these mathematicians, put them under control so that they don't bring down the end of the world, the apocalypse. And that's basically the situation that we're in, is that just by people doodling around creating, what they think is a funny little lark. Hey, there's Chinese webcams in the United States who have a vulnerability where I can get them to do a botnet attack against Twitter. Let's see what happens. And then all of a sudden, Twitter's down, Facebook is down, Netflix is down, and
I think it affected the DNS servers, which is one of the biggest DNSs in Europe or in America. I'm not sure, but it was a big one. Yeah.
Right, the catastrophic risks, and people are now finally beginning to talk about the application of artificial intelligence to cybercrime, cyber theft. I've always, this is one of the messages I've always had, or arguments I've always had with the catastrophic risks AI community, people like Miri, is that they were always focused on, the God jumping out of the box and taking over the world in 10 seconds and building its nanotech armies and blah blah blah. No, it's going to be like your refrigerator launching this messy attack that kind of accidentally brings half the streets to a crawl, and the civilization collapses because it's internally fresh. It's going to be different than this kind of big God jumping out of a box that they've been imagining, and we have to prepare for that.
I mean, Lee, that's well, I have to say I do take some of these concerned seriously, but I think the more immediate threats are the ones where people are going to be engaging in cyber crime or cyber stupidity or just cyber, yeah, pranksterism. And it'll end up having impacts that are much larger than they had anticipated. It's kind of like graffiti artists. They want to damage, like do a bit of damage. They don't want to kill people. They just want
Right.
to, like, write their name in the train or maybe smash a few windows, mostly, maybe a bit more than that. But at the end of the day, they're not really interested in real terrorism. They're just interested in showing their friends how, I don't know, rebellious they can be. And, yeah. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, these sorts of things have consequences. We're talking, yeah, about like a self-automating systems that can almost automatically bring down other systems that could be of great importance. I mean, imagine it started bringing down hospital computers. That'd be nasty.
Exactly. Right. Well,
Maybe, imagine there was like a specific cable that was sharing bandwidth data from one hospital to another, and it got infected, and it was on one end it was reporting the wrong information, or a hospital A's data was getting that meant to be sending data to hospital B was sending data to hospital C instead, and it all got mixed up. It would be nasty. A lot of
yeah.
people died. Yeah.
Well, there's already been a hospital in the United States that had to pay, $30,000 or something in ransomware payment to get its hospital data unlocked. It was offline for 2 weeks because of ransomware.
Wow.
So, and who knows how many private firms that's happened to. It happened to my mother-in-law. She paid $500 to get her computer back from ransomware.
Really? Oh
So,
God, it's
yeah.
never. I haven't happened to anybody or anybody who admits it anyway. Out of my friends, it'd be embarrassing, I'd
No, it's
say.
apparently not that uncommon. Never happened to me, thank God. But
Mm. So
anyway, I think that,
these
that's
sorts
what
of threats are real. Yes.
yeah, the catastrophic threats are absolutely real. And I bet there are people in the DoD. I know that there are people in the DoD. I've seen the reporting in Wired and other places of people in the DoD, the Defense Department of the United States, who are taking cyber warfare plus artificial intelligence seriously. Now, it goes without saying, we're taking cyber warfare extremely seriously in the United States right now, in general, because we have been a subject of open Russian attempts at cyber intrusion into our election over the past year. And what the hell Putin thinks he's doing, and what whirlwind he's going to reap when Hillary gets elected and starts directing her foreign policy against him. That's scary. But so I don't know what the Russians think they're doing. And then the Chinese are primarily focused on corporate espionage as opposed to, so far as we know. But we've been in both answer to the Chinese and Russians, the American Defense Department's been ramping up its cyber warfare capabilities. But the question is, how seriously do they take the need to prepare for semi-autonomous or fully autonomous cyber weapons and cyber threats that might emerge out of artificial intelligence? I don't think that they've been taking it that seriously yet, and they should.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Well, I mean, it was interesting that Obama brought up the idea of funneling a whole heap of money into AI research as well. And they were talking about, well, if we need to counter these cyber threats, maybe we really need to push a whole heap of money into fundamental research in cybersecurity AI. And he compared it to the moonshot sort of developments, the 1.5%, sorry, 0.5% of GDP being funneled into space programs. And like, there's nothing really. Oh, I mean, was there a military reason? Maybe a small one, but it was mostly curiosity. But if there's a military reason, I can imagine more than 0.5% GDP going into AI research. But even if it's just zero point 0.5, as Obama said in his interview, and by the way, everybody hasn't watched it, you should really read and watch the interview. That's $80 billion per year. At the moment, there's like maybe half a billion government funding on AI research, if that. That's
Right.
160-fold increase.
Well, this is one of the problems with futurist interventions in public policy, is that the public policy calculus for how much good we could do with X amount of money in the next year
Hmm.
is always relatively discrete set of questions. And of course, that's what most of the political argument is about. And you can have quite extreme differences of opinion about it, but at least it's a discrete question. The the public policy argument about what the consequences might be of different policy interventions now or investments now in 30 years or 40 years or 50 years, then you're in a real different ballpark. So, for instance, with anti-aging, we've been talking a lot about the longevity dividend investment, and here in the United States, we spend 18% of our GDP on healthcare, which is crazy because most other countries in the industrialized world, spend 8 to 10% of their GDP on healthcare and get apparently the same result or better, have longer life expectancy, better health outcomes, and so forth. If you make it to be 75 years old in the United States, you get a better quality of healthcare in the United States generally than you do if you're British or French or whatever. But whether that's actually the goal is to for people to survive to 75 and then be hooked up to machines and for the declining years is really, I don't know. But anyway, but the question is, yes, the United States could spend less on healthcare, but if we could really put on the table, you could spend another 1% of your GDP for 10 years. And then you could all live an extra 100 years. Would the public buy? If we could make that kind of bargain, of course, I think the public would buy it. Now, with anti-aging medicine, I think it's relatively
But first
easy.
you'd have to get them to believe that you could achieve that.
Yes. Yeah, you have to get them to believe you could achieve it, and you'd have to get them over their concerns about the externalities. What's going to happen if we have all these old people running around and is the environment going to collapse? All the things that people bring up in response to longevity. Now, you then try to make this kind of calculus and bargain with people around artificial intelligence when the Terminator scenario is already in the back of their mind and technological unemployment and so forth. It's a much harder sell. I've always argued that longevity dividend is the most popular and should be the spear on the prow of our boat, because it is the policy that we futurists have to offer that the vast majority of people can wrap their mind around, although they have reservations. But artificial intelligence is a much harder one. Unless we have all the legwork done, all the bulwark around it done that says this is what the answer is to technological unemployment, this is what the answer is to catastrophic risks, and so forth. And I don't think that work's been done yet.
Okay, so how do you think people, what do you propose in order to influence the right people to do this work, to get out there and convince the right people to do the work?
I'm not that interested, frankly, in a moonshot approach to artificial intelligence. I think that one of the critiques that the libertarian right has of leftist approaches to technological innovation is that we have a pick a winner approach, which has not been shown to be terribly successful in the past. I think that the left does best for technological innovation when it supports an expansion of basic education, higher education, basic research funding, efficient regulation of technological risks so that industries are facilitated and not hindered by regulatory environments. And not when we necessarily pour a bunch of money into a particular approach to a technology. The nanotechnology initiative, it did some good, but it didn't. It had to pick a winner, and it did not pick nanorobotics. It picked nanomaterials. Now, nanomaterials eventually get us to nanorobotics. So okay, but we could have been working on nanorobotics questions in the 1990s, but the politics around the nanotechnology initiative said, no, that's just science fiction. Now we have Nobel Prize winners this year who had been working on nanorobotics, and it's like, everyone's like, oh yeah, well, nanorobotics is coming eventually too. So this pick a winner approach to public policy, I think, has some problems. And I think it's an even bigger problem around artificial intelligence. We see this also with the brain brain initiatives. In the first place, the American brain initiative is way too small to accomplish anything. But even the European Brain Initiative, it has to pick winners. It has to pick particular approaches to brain emulation. And I'm not sure that the evidence is there yet about which approaches to brain emulation are really the most fruitful to invest in. So I would support more support for basic scientific innovation as opposed to pick winners.
So you're in favour of doing foundational research in basic science? Is that what you're saying, or
Yes, I mean, I think in the end, when we had World
you
War
mean
II, we needed in
foundational
Manhattan.
physics? Are you talking?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't have said in 1939 or 40, I wouldn't have said, let's just expand our research on basic physics and maybe eventually we'll win the war. You mean, at that point, yes, you have to pick a winner. You have to say nuclear weapons and Manhattan Project.
Yeah.
But we're not in that point right now, unless something crazy happens. Hopefully not. But right now we're in the point where let 10,000 flowers bloom in artificial intelligence research, and the best way to do that is to invest in fertilizer, not to invest in particular kind of flower.
Okay. Well, what do you think about DeepMind's research? You've been following it. I mean, there's been a lot of interesting sort of research coming out of there, and they've been doing stuff that other people have, or other organisations haven't been able to do. I mean, we spoke about AlphaGo in the past. More recently, they've been doing deep DQNs, and they've been quote unquote doing novelty sort of stuff where reinforcement learning doesn't need a constant drip of rewards in order to keep the AI going. The rewards can be sparse, but the AI will still try and search and through larger spaces of pattern space, yeah, and solve problems where rewards are much further away, which I thought was interesting. But yeah. What do you think? Yeah.
Well, I try not to get too far out of my spheres of competence, which is social science, public policy, and all of that. I follow all the artificial intelligence progress avidly, and I'm very excited by its progress. I have not yet had a chance to have a conversation with a smartphone that I thought was really had lived up to my science fiction expectations about what the future could do for me. So I'm still a little disappointed by the lack of jetpacks, but I'm sure they'll get here eventually. Yeah.
I'd certainly like the jetpacks, but I don't think our current methods of traffic control will be able to handle them very well.
Right.
Yes, unless they're self-driving jetpacks. But even so.
Well, the self-driving progress is one of those places where who among us in the futurist community could have predicted how quickly this set of questions would be upon us? And I would just point out that Patrick Lynn, who is a close friend of the IET and part of our broader community, was the one who wrote the.
Right?
No, he's in Southern California.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're right.
Patrick Lynn, yeah. He was the one who wrote the generative article about consequentialist logics being written into, trolley car problem logics being written into self-driving algorithms that has become like the sine qua non of artificial intelligence ethics questions right now. It's like if a car is going to hit 3 kids or kill you by throwing you off the bridge, should it kill you? And Mercedes-Benz just came out with their answer. Their self-driving car is going to kill the kids and not kill you. So, I think this is really it honed in on one of the key points. But anyway,
if you're having a heart attack in the car and you needed to get to the hospital in 5 minutes, are you saying these Mercedes-Benz would plow through crowds in order to get you to the hospital on time?
I think that's a fascinating question. How many people would the car kill to save your life? That's wonderful. Sir, I see you're having respiratory distress. How many people should I kill?
I'm sure it would make the executive decision itself if you're incapacitated. Yeah, that would be interesting. But on the other hand, I wouldn't want to get in a negative utilitarian car if I was feeling down that day either. Because then it might severely disvalue my life.
I see
and
you're
don't like
depressed,
cause
sir.
a
I
car
will kill
accident.
you immediately.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So there's all
Yeah,
sorts of like yeah, playroom ethical arguments that come out about these. But yeah, I'd love to interview him. It sounds like he really does. I've seen him around Facebook. I haven't really engaged with him personally too much, but he sounds like he'd be a good person to have on the show. Do you reckon he'd be
Patrick's
very?
very sharp. Yeah,
He would?
Patrick's very sharp. So yeah, you've interviewed Seth Baum also, right, about catastrophic risks.
Nope.
Catastrophic Risks Institute. Seth Baum's another one who's making a lot of progress right now with kind of techno-progressive approaches to public policy around the
Mm-hmm.
catastrophic risks, working
Mm.
on nuclear weapons, artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, and so forth. The full agenda, as opposed to the rather restricted agenda that Future of Humanity Institute has focused on.
Mm.
Once you get the idea fixed that artificial intelligence jumping out of the box is the only catastrophic risk we face, then it becomes harder and harder to keep the fuller panoply of risks on the table.
Yeah, they say like I think Mary is more focused on the AI only risks or the advanced superintelligence AI only risks. Nick Bostrom is famous for that, and I guess so is the Future of Humanity Institute because of his research there. But yeah, I mean they do put a lot of research into AI risk there. Yeah, they've got one of their friends, the Cambridge Centre for Existential Risk, got a conference coming up this December. I
Hmm.
think it's just going to be general existential risk, not just AI this time. So.
You mean the Future of Life Institute?
No, no, this is in Cambridge, the
Oh,
Cambridge
okay.
Centre for Existential Risk. Centre for the
Cool. I'll take a
Study,
look.
CSER, Centre for the Study of
Oh,
Existential Risk,
Cambridge,
sorry.
England. See, I'm 2 miles from Cambridge, Massachusetts. So,
Oh, okay, right, there's a Cambridge in America too, isn't there? It's like there's a Melbourne in America as well, which is kind of confusing. But yeah, yeah, this is quite interesting. There's also going to be a big AI conference in Melbourne next year, the biggest one in the world, ICHCAI, and the AGI conference is going to be following that. And you know, I might put on a futurist conference if you know if there's going to be speakers in town that I need to import by paying huge amounts of airfares for.
I was very sorry to miss you when I was in Melbourne this summer
Yeah,
for the.
yeah, yeah. It just didn't work out. I was trying to get like tickets, but no, they just like shot up before really I had a chance to consider it properly. Yeah. Mm. But yeah, all's
We
well
should do
anyway.
something in Vietnam.
Yeah. There's a few interesting developments over here, but it's nowhere near as big. I put up a notice about having a meeting about this sort of thing, and I didn't really get much of a response. But there was an AI meeting, and people mentioned the singularity. So I think, and like the risks of AI. So it seems as though these futurist memes are pretty widespread now. It was a few years ago. I'm pretty sure that this wouldn't have happened, and I mean, as a result of I guess, brand name like celebrities that loom large in the imagination of the tech community are largely responsible for this, like Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking in the science community and Bill Gates and all these sorts of people look up to. And I guess as soon as somebody like these people say, yes, this is something worth thinking about, everybody gives themselves permission to start talking about them and the issues and to start thinking about them and debating them in sort of public circles, which is an interesting phenomenon. Mm. The big appeal to authority, really.
Well, apparently, if Trump wins here in the United States, we're all going to have to learn Russian. So I will say in closing, tovarish, which means comrade,
Yes, good.
uh, that it's always a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks,
Um,
James.
I, I have to log off and go. I have a staff now. I have a staff of 6. After
Oh,
15, 16 years of being a lone wolf administrator who reporting to no one and with no reports, I now actually have to manage people
damn it.
here in Boston. So I have to log off. But it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And after our election derangement syndrome
Mhm.
subsides, we will all be a little bit saner and hopefully we can chat again.
Yes, definitely, absolutely, totally in for that, and we can discuss the outcome, for good or bad.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, James. I'll speak to you soon, and have a great day.
Okay. You too.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.